The game's maybe been done for the last couple of weeks on the field, but off of it, things are simply just starting to go ahead and heat up here tonight. Welcome to the Any Given Saturday podcast, where we take a 50,000-foot view of college football. And we are here on a surprisingly warm Friday afternoon here in the Buckeye State, as I'm recording this on the 26th of January. And we are on the heels of some serious fallout potentially happening up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We did end up seeing Jim Harbaugh taking the job that has been offered by the LA Chargers and going to go and join those NFL ranks and be one of the prestigious 32 head coaches in the NFL. So we have that to talk about, and we have quite a bit more to talk about later on this podcast here tonight. But I hope, regardless of what brings you to the table, I hope you are excited for today's Any Given Saturday podcast. And if you are, I need you guys to go ahead and do a couple of things for me. Smack that like button, hit that subscribe button for me as well if you do happen to be brand new, because hitting that like button, it only takes a few seconds, 5 seconds tops. But what that does for me is, one, it lets me know you enjoy the content. It really lets me know that. And then also on top of that, it also lets me know that, hey, you are someone that is trying to get this video out to more college football fans like yourself, because that O word that some people like to throw around, we tried to say it a couple of times. I almost puked in the attempt to do so, so I'm not going to even try to say the O word out loud. But I don't necessarily believe in that O word. I think there's still college football news happening, and us still having podcasts well into January, on the verge of February, by the way, is a huge microcosm of that. So hope you guys are excited for tonight's show. And with that being said, we got to lead off with some of the biggest news that we've had in just last couple of days. There's going to be a head coaching opening up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Jim Harbaugh, fresh off of a national championship for the Michigan Wolverines, well, he's not going to be coaching for that team in the very next season. He is actually going to be leaving for the NFL, as he has accepted the LA Chargers job on a 5-year contract. So, do we wonder to ourselves, is this going to cause the same type of fallout that we saw with the Nick Saban retirement, for example, where we ended up seeing Kalen DeBoer go from Washington to Alabama, Jeff Fish go from Arizona to Washington, and we saw the San Jose State head coach, whose name escapes us at this very moment, but he's going from San Jose State to Arizona. And then the former Navy coach, he is now the head coach at San Jose State. So that was all the coaching changes that happened because of what we saw from Nick Saban retiring from a couple of weeks ago. Do we possibly go ahead and see that same type of fallout with another big hire? And I think we are living in unprecedented times in college football right now. This is the first time in the college football playoff era where 3 of the 4 teams that made the college football playoff in the previous season, they're going to have a new head coach. Alabama, of course, has a new head coach. Washington has a head coach, and Michigan is going to have a new head coach. The only question is, who is that head coach going to be? Now, we took a look in the transfer portal, and we took a look online, take a look at some sources that are out there in terms of, who's being thrown out for this Michigan head coaching job, that vacancy that currently lies out there in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I strongly believe and I strongly suggest that we are likely going to see a hire come in from an internal standpoint. I think it's very likely that we're going to see the offensive coordinator slash offensive line coach at Michigan take over for the job. I think Sharon Moore is going to be that favorite to go ahead and take over for that Michigan head coaching job. And there's a couple of reasons why I do believe this. First and foremost, we're talking about a guy that was an acting head coach during the time that Jim Harbaugh was suspended that second time around when we saw him go ahead and be suspended by the Big Ten Conference itself. This is the second of two times Jim Harbaugh was suspended over the past college football season. But Sharon Moore, he mainly got to coach in that Penn State matchup. And in that Penn State matchup, he actually did a pretty good job leading that team. That was a big win for his guys, able to take down Penn State and help navigate Michigan at the wheel, right? And Michigan was a high rolling machine. It's at a point where Michigan, at least this past season, it was very clear that this was a player-led squad based off of what we saw in the first Harbaugh suspension and in that second Harbaugh suspension as well. And it really paid dividends towards the end of the season as Michigan, while things were mostly smooth on the field, off the field, it was one of the most turbulent seasons that any team could have possibly have dealt with in modern college football. And yet they were still able to navigate all of that on their path to a national championship. Now, regardless of who is going to be that new head coach at the University of Michigan, do we see a possibility of NCAA sanctions being placed on this program down the line? Now, we do know that the NCAA is notoriously slow for acting upon investigations and handing out punishments uh, later on down the line. But I would be very interested to see what the NCAA eventually does, because that NCAA investigation is still ongoing. The Big Ten Conference did not wait for the NCAA to act. They did what they felt was a rightful punishment, the suspension of Jim Harbaugh for 3 games, 2 of those games going against Penn State and Ohio State. But the NCAA, they have multiple options. It could be a thing where we see Michigan vacate a national championship. We could see this program on probation and other punishments be enacted by the NCAA, whatever little power they do end up having. They are having a bunch of losses in the courtrooms. But with that being said, whoever is going to handle that Michigan coaching job, it's going to have to be somebody that's going to have to navigate those NCAA investigations and the cloud that's going to be hung over his head at least until the NCAA concludes its investigation. And we've seen time and time again how this can negatively impact a program, leading to more distractions that are inside the locker room, to what could happen in recruiting and in the transfer portal, that negative recruiting slaying potential recruits as well as potential college football players that are in the transfer portal from going to Michigan because of negative recruiting pinches. So it is something to watch out for. Now, it is my strong suspicion that Sharon Moore will be your next head coach at Michigan. And it's not just because of what the betting markets say. I took a look at the betting markets as well, and it seems that Sharon Moore is a heavy favorite for the time being. And it's a significant favorite between Sharon Moore and literally everybody else. But coincidentally, we also took a look at the transfer portal since we saw the announcement of Jim Harbaugh leaving for the LA Chargers. Now, unlike in the Alabama situation where we have since seen multiple Alabama players enter the transfer portal and have moved on to new schools, we have not really seen that in Michigan. As of when I'm recording this in the afternoon, it's about 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. just past couple of days, we have not seen any new players from that Michigan program that is currently on the roster entering that transfer portal right now. And that's a very unique circumstance because even now, Arizona is still having kids enter the transfer portal. Washington is still having kids enter the transfer portal. Same could be said for an Alabama as well. So, still seeing some fallout from that, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So, based off of that, I think there is a strong inclination that Sharon Moore is going to be your next head coach at the University of Michigan. But with that said, it does bring up a couple of questions with him being really a first time head coach if that ends up being the case. Being an interim head coach is a lot different than having that interim tag removed. I've equated as an interim coach, you're at the wheel of a plane, right? You have the steering wheel in your fingers, but the autopilot is turned on. So when you're the interim head coach, just like a pilot that has the autopilot turned on, you just have to keep it straight because the plane will do most of the work. And really, while you're in autopilot, what those pilots are doing is just looking at various monitors to make sure that everything is running smoothly. That's what an interim head coach is, particularly in major college football. They're just making sure that they are ensuring that the program is running as smooth as possible, or at least at a similar state as what the current or previous head coach had that program at the time. Being an a non-interim head coach is different because now you are entrusted with landing the plane, making sure the plane is taking off, all of those other checks and balances that go with ensuring the aircraft runs smoothly. I would argue that it leads to more responsibility. So long term, how does Sharon Moore hold on to that? And because he's also going to be a first time head coach, who is he going to have as his offensive coordinator? Now, the Big Ten is going to be a much more difficult path after this season. The Michigan's football schedule is not going to be an easy one to navigate. The football schedule for the University of Michigan is going to be a harder challenge than what we saw them have to go through this past season. Because really, aside from Penn State and Michigan, they didn't have anyone to challenge them realistically over the course of the regular season. But things will really start to pick up for Michigan next season. Now, we're looking at, of course, that Ohio State game that is going to be in Columbus November 30th. But we also have other ranked opponents or teams that will be very close to being ranked. You got Texas September 7th, and Steve Sarkisian was on the doorsteps of having Texas in that national championship game. USC, what does that team look like under Lincoln Riley? I would not be surprised if USC, when the preseason polls come out this fall, could we see USC ranked as a top 25 preseason team as well? Washington, Jed Fish is a very good coach, even though they're losing some key guys through the transfer portal and the draft. Playing at Husky Stadium is not going to be easy. And then, of course, you got Oregon. You're hosting Oregon too, and Oregon, it was a top 10 team this year. Oregon, I would argue, was one of the best teams that did not make the college football playoff, and that was evident by what they accomplished in that Fiesta Bowl against a very motivated Liberty Flame squad. So the schedule for Michigan is going to be very difficult in comparison to what they had to do this past season. And part of that is because the divisions are going to be gone in the Big Ten. We will not see Big Ten have divisions moving forward. So it's possible that even if Michigan is able to navigate that schedule successfully to where they finish in the top two in the Big Ten, you could see a spot to where Michigan might have to play a Ohio State again. They might have to play a Washington a second time. They might have to play an Oregon a second time. Penn State might not be on that schedule this for 2024, but could Penn State make a run in that Big Ten championship game as well? It leaves a lot to be seen, and it's going to be a very interesting conference to monitor. So I say all this because I think it's important for the offensive coordinator that he does end up hiring to either be within the program as well, but also have offensive coordinator experience, because the schedule that Michigan is going to face, it could be a very long day, very long year for Michigan, at least in comparison to what they accomplished here in 2023, if they have both an inexperienced head coach, an inexperienced offensive coordinator that is not used to calling plays, doesn't have much experience running an offense and creating an offensive scheme, and not to mention, many of the players on this Michigan team that are coming back, they haven't been starters. So, got a lot of new guys that are going to have to fill in and, contribute right away and hit that ground running. It's a very intriguing situation to look after. However, one person that I would say that you should definitely look out for in the situation that maybe Michigan does not hire from within, do we see a situation to where Lance Leopold could take the head coaching job at Michigan? Lance Leopold, there's no secret out there, and this is kind of beating a dead horse at this point. Lance Leopold is a very good head coach. He's a guy that knows how to win. He's been a head coach between Division III and this FBS level since 2007. He's 163-60, and most notably in his 3 years at Kansas, he's done something that many coaches have tried to do, but have frankly failed to do in modern college football. Get Kansas to multiple bowl games in a row. Kansas going 9-4 this year, and they have a bowl win, but this is the second year in a row that Kansas was bowl eligible. That is a big accomplishment for a program that, frankly, just to put it like this, Kansas is not very historically good when it comes to football at the University of Kansas. And there are also external factors that are in place at the University of Kansas in terms of the possibility of winning a national championship for the Jayhawks in football. Basketball is a lot different. But in football, you need more than 5 guys to win a national championship. You really need 30 to 40 guys minimum in order to win a national championship. Because not only does your top 22 have to be good, your starters have to be good, but there can't be that much of a gap between the starters and the backups. It's why we haven't seen anyone that has failed to meet that blue chip ratio, that 50% threshold of 4 and 5-star players on your roster, winning a national championship in spite of that, since that was tracked by 247 Sports back in 2015 is when this stat started to be tracked. But Lance Leopold has found a way to win at Kansas, nearly taking Kansas to a 10-win season. So it's clear that Lance Leopold knows how to win, in spite of the fact that there's been many times during his FBS coaching career he's had the second best roster on the field. And that also dates back to his time at Buffalo. He was at Buffalo before this. He led Buffalo to 2 conference championships and a top 25 finish in his final year. That was that COVID year back in 2020. But Lance Leopold also has some familiarity with the Midwest around that area. Lance Leopold was a guy that was born and raised in Wisconsin, so not too far from where Ann Arbor is today. Lance Leopold, he was coaching in Wisconsin, but not at the big Wisconsin that you're thinking about. He was a coach at Wisconsin Whitewater for 8 years. He was a player at Wisconsin Whitewater way back in the day. And at his time with Wisconsin Whitewater, in the 8 years that he was there, he's led them to 7 playoff appearances, 7 national championship appearances, 6 of them winning the actual national championship at the Division III level. So he's capable of winning national championships. But because of those external factors at Kansas, it limits the ceiling to, I think, what Kansas could possibly accomplish. Could Kansas someday make the college football playoff? That absolutely can happen, especially with today's 12-team format, where if you're in the Big 12, all you have to do is win your conference. You're guaranteed going to be in. You're good. But how much higher can Kansas go? That's a really tough question to answer. Is there ever a realistic possibility that Kansas could have enough dudes on their team to be a national championship contender any given year? And I don't think the answer is yes, unless there are some significant improvements that go into Kansas's NIL collective for football and in their athletic facilities and overall investment into football. And while they're getting better at investing, they're working on stadium renovations right now. Kansas still has some work to do in its football department if they ever want to be a national championship contender in today's college football landscape. Michigan, on the other hand, does not have those same external factors. Everything that you need at Michigan is there if you want to win a national championship. So, if they don't really believe that Sherrod Moore is the guy long term, I think Lance Leopold is certainly someone to watch in this coaching search at the University of Michigan. He knows how to win, he knows the area, and he just has the experience. He knows how to win at the Power 5, now Power 4 level. It's an interesting dynamic to watch out for over these next couple of days. So while Lance Leopold isn't the favorite, we'll definitely keep an eye on if they go in a different direction than Sherrod Moore. So right now, the Michigan football coach odds are at plus 600 for Lance Leopold. And while he certainly isn't a favorite, I think there might be some value there to look after this Michigan head coaching position. We'll just have to wait and see over the next couple of days what that could possibly entail, right? So, that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into what we got going on next. And what we have going on next is we are we know what kind of fallout this could cause. Now, like I said, we do end up believing that Sherrod Moore is going to have this job because we haven't really seen any transfer portal movement here in the last couple of days. But that doesn't mean there hasn't been any college football movement in terms of the transfer portal at all. Because, oh, baby, we have had some very significant transfer portal movement since the last time that I ended up recording a podcast for you guys here today. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into what big changes have we seen in terms of announcements in this transfer portal. And a lot of it is from that fallout of the Nick Saban retirement. You want to talk about, first and foremost, probably one of the biggest shocks in the transfer portal. You guys remember when we were talking about Caleb Downs here in the last podcast? Georgia kid, former 5-star player, freshman All-American, first team All-SEC guy. He was crystal balled to Georgia. And well, he has made a decision officially, but it's not at Georgia. It's going to go to Ohio State. The Ohio State Buckeyes found a way to sweep in and get a major impact player for that defensive side. Defensive side of the ball, by the way, that is already returning several starters for this 2024 team. So Caleb Downs is going to Ohio State. This is a massive deal. Getting somebody from the state of Georgia out of that state yet again, the second time that Georgia cannot get this kid, and he's going to go up to Columbus, Ohio to play the rest of his college ball. Now, he is going to be a true sophomore. He obviously played a lot in his freshman year. Freshman All-American is all you really need to know about that. So he has at least 3 more years of eligibility, likely will declare for the NFL draft after not this coming season, but the next season, right? So Caleb Downs could slot in and be a starter right away. He should be a starter. If you're a first team all SEC guy as a true freshman, I would imagine you could start almost anywhere you want. So for Ohio State to get this kid, it makes it very clear no excuses for Ryan Day. Absolutely no excuses for Ryan Day. Clearly, there is something that has been lit under the fire at Ohio State. Seeing your arch rival win a national championship for the first time since 1997. I wasn't born yet when the last time that has happened. I was born a couple of months after Michigan won their previous national championship. So Caleb Downs is going to Ohio State and should continue to make a big impact on college football fields around the country. But he wasn't the only Alabama kid to really enter this transfer portal. We're talking about guys such as Jameer Grimsley. Jameer Grimsley, he's from Tampa, Florida. This is a kid that was a 4-star commit for the class of 2024. He was going to go to Alabama, but it was very clear that Jameer Grimsley, he left the state of Florida, left that Sunshine State to be the to go and play for Nick Saban. It's not because of the Alabama culture, so to speak. But with Nick Saban retiring, Jameer Grimsley, back on December 18th, this is about a week ago, he ended up reopening his recruiting process. So instead of him going to Alabama, he's going to go to Florida. So not the same caliber of team, clearly. Florida, I think, needs to at least go to a bowl game in order to go and save Bill Napier's job. Jameer Grimsley might help out with this. This is a very talented kid. We'll see what he can do in his first year at Florida. So more to come on this moving forward. As for what we also have in the transfer portal, how about what's going on with the Washington Huskies? How about what's going on with what we have with Kalen DeMore leaving? Well, we've actually had quite a few additional players leave Washington, but not all of them are going to Alabama. Jeremy Bernard, for example, is one of those kids. Jeremy Bernard, he's a 4-star guy from Washington, was someone that was behind all of that talent at Washington. And, this is a kid that was likely going to be the wide receiver 1 at Washington next year, because the top 3 receivers that are on that team, they're all NFL talents. They're all going to be drafted in the NFL in a few months. So Jeremy Bernard, he played in 14 games this year. He caught a couple of touchdown passes. He was going to be that wide receiver 1, but he doesn't want to be at Washington anymore. He's going to commit to Michigan State. This was a surprise. No, not Michigan State. Wow, I read those notes wrong. I messed that up. He was originally committed to Michigan State. He transferred to Washington. So this is going to be a second transfer. He's going to go to Alabama. So is Parker Brailsford, who appeared in 15 games for this Washington Huskies team over the course of this past season, on the way to nearly winning that national championship. Didn't quite make that happen. But like I said, not everyone that is leaving Washington is going to Alabama, though. Julius Bulog, who is on that same offensive line as Parker's Brailsford, for example, Brailo played in 12 games this year. He had some playing time. He was downgraded to 3 stars on 247 Sports. He was originally a 4-star kid, but he's not only not going to Alabama, he's going to go to Ole Miss. So, not following Kalen DeBoer to the Crimson Tide, not only that, he's going to go to one of his rivals. So, a very intriguing move by Julius Balo. Maybe just wasn't feeling Kalen DeBoer, maybe as much as people would want to say that he was. However, not everyone that was in the transfer portal for Washington has left Washington, actually, matter of fact. Demarius Davis was a class of 2024 recruit, did sign with Washington, and he was somebody that was enrolled in campus like a couple of weeks ago. But with the Kalen DeBoer news, he did open up his recruitment again. He was listed in the transfer portal for a brief period of time. He entered on like the 22nd. Well, he did make a decision. He is going to return to Washington, though. So, Demarius Davis, going to be there as a true freshman. Must have liked what Jeff Fish was saying about him. So, Demarius Davis, the 4-star recruit, he's going to stay at Washington at least for now. As for the Arizona Wildcats, though, the Arizona Wildcats have not had that same luck as maybe Washington has had in the transfer portal. Because at least Washington, since they took Arizona's head coach, they can pull from a Power 5 roster. Arizona doesn't get that same luxury because they took San Jose State's head coach. And no disrespect to San Jose State, but they're not that Power 5 level, so not as many guys that are Power 5 caliber that are willing to transfer to Arizona, right? Even though it's not too terribly far. So Arizona did lose a couple of guys in the transfer portal. FCN's Prysock, he's a 4-star corner, played in 13 games for the Wildcats, had 61 tackles, an interception, 7 pass breakups. He's a 4-star kid that has a couple years of eligibility left. He is currently crystal balled to Washington, which not too terribly surprised about by any means. Prysock is looking to follow his head coach up to Washington. Went to Arizona for the head coach. As for other news regarding the Arizona Wildcats, Takario Davis, another corner. He is actually a 3-star kid, but was upgraded to 4 stars. He played in 13 games as a true sophomore. Also had an interception, 15 pass breakups in the 13 games. He isn't crystal balled necessarily, but we talk about certain players and we try to get an idea of what, like what's the best fit for this kid? What else would be a good fit? So we try to think of multiple schools when we do this, but Takario Davis, I think there's only one school that really makes sense. I would not be shocked if this kid also ends up going to Washington. He has Power 5 playing experience, and his coach is up in Washington right now. So if Takario Davis goes anywhere other than Washington, I would legitimately be a little shocked, to be honest with you. Now, it's not all bad for Arizona. Kean Burnett, the 4-star tight end, played in 13 games this year, caught a few passes, mostly was a blocking tight end / special teams guy. He is going to remain at Arizona for right now. He does have a couple of years of eligibility remaining. So looking to impress the new coaching staff as he tries his best to get a little bit more playing time. And then finally, what are the after effects out in San Jose State? What's going on in San Jose State in this transfer portal right now? Well, San Jose State, as of right now, looks like they're projected to take a couple at least one big loss. Nick Nash, former 2-star kid, but this is a guy that was a quarterback when he first was getting recruited, made a successful transition to wide receiver, and Nick Nash was very productive. He ends up going to get 48 catches, 728 yards, 8 touchdowns in 13 games. It looked like it was going to be one of those things where Nick Nash, he was going to leave in that transfer portal. Thankfully, he's going to return to San Jose State, but San Jose State is losing a bunch of players. Um, just one of those secondary effects of the transfer portal and this coaching carousel that we are currently on right now. Rounding out the transfer portal updates for right now that maybe don't completely involve the Nick Saban fallout. Ian Jackson, for example, was on there. He actually entered the transfer portal before Nick Saban retired, was an Alabama linebacker, still listed as a four-star recruit by 247 Sports. He's actually leaving the Power Five completely. He is actually going to go to UTSA. We has a couple years of eligibility. Love this move for Ian Jackson. He only played in 3 games in the 3 years that he was at Alabama. And during this whole time, he's only recorded 1 tackle. So Ian Jackson hasn't really seen the field, but it's a nice pickup on UTSA, banking on that former blue chip potential that Ian Jackson might or might not have. It's a good shot in the dark for the Roadrunners, and it's good for Ian Jackson because I think he'll have a better opportunity to get playing time down the road. Speaking of guys that I think are going to get more playing time, Tumi's Adelaide. Tumi's Adelaide was originally on Texas A&M, then he transferred to Michigan State, and on a Michigan State team that was really not good. They were not very good at all. He only appeared in 6 games. He didn't even register double-digit tackles. So we talked about Tumi's Adelaide earlier, and we thought that it would be a good idea for him to go ahead, maybe go to that group of 5 level, maybe down in the state of Texas, that Sun Belt, Conference USA, American type field, right? He made his decision. He's going to go to Texas State, and I love that for him. Texas State, I think, is a program that is certainly on the rise. So, and they need some help defensively. They were in their share of shootouts here over the course of the season. Still made a bowl game. Maybe he could help Texas State be better defensively in 2024. But guys, I think that might be it in transfer portal updates. What has surprised you at this point in the transfer portal? Let me know down in the comments below. And speaking of that comment section, during this long period of time where we don't have college football games happening on the field, this is a great time where if you guys have any questions that you want me to ask that is college football related, leave that for me down in the comment section as well. And I will, because I certainly do my best to look at all of your guys' comments. And that being said, if you leave a question for me, I will include in the next podcast. So if that's something that tickles your pickle, definitely encourage you to leave a comment for me down in the comment section here for this video. So that being said, here we are. What else do we have going on in this great land of college football? This could have some implications in college football as well. I'm sure you guys have heard about the news that just dropped literally yesterday. You guys remember Kayshon Boutte? Kayshon Boutte was someone that played at LSU, ended up being drafted in the 6th round by the New England Patriots. Well, he was arrested the other day for sports gambling violations. He's facing 1 felony count of computer fraud and 1 misdemeanor count of gaming prohibited for persons under the age of 21. He was just booked in the East Baton Rouge Parish Jail recently as yesterday. And this man was busy while he was at LSU. This man allegedly, this is still very early on in the process, Boutte placed more than 8,900 bets in a span of a year between April of 2022 and May of this past year. He turned 21 on May 7th, and during his time at LSU, of those 8,900 bets, apparently 17 were waged on NCAA football games. 6 of them were on LSU games themselves. So it leads to a couple of questions. First and foremost, How does one place 8,900 bets in a span of a year? I mean, you got to think about what kind of you want to talk about the number of transactions that is. If you bet every single day, that would be placing 24 bets a day. 24. And I enjoy sports betting as much as the next guy. I'm not going to shy away from that at all. Of course, bet responsibly if you do, but I can't think of 8,900 things to bet on. Even if I bet on every single college football game this year, I still would not be close to that 8,900. I wouldn't get there. So that's insane that one, well, I'm not surprised that he had the money to do it, because of what's going on with NIL, but what's going on with what we have happening, just having the time to put all those bets in, right? That's just a crazy thing to think about. But secondarily, I wonder what the effects long term are going to be on the LSU football program going forward. I would imagine, since it does involve college football games and specifically LSU football games themselves, it makes you wonder if the NCAA will eventually punish LSU for that. Because, and I'm speaking as someone that used to compete in college athletics too, if you bet on your own sport, you lose what's left of your eligibility. It doesn't matter if you have 4 years or if it's your last year. If you are caught gambling on your own games, you lose your eligibility and you will not be able to get it back. If you're a college athlete and you're betting, then I think you lose it for like a year, but then you could possibly be reinstated. But if these allegations are true, and again, these are allegations, he has been charged with these crimes, but he has not been convicted. He has not been found guilty yet. What happens to the LSU program? Because if he is found guilty and these allegations are true, then LSU played a player that shouldn't have been eligible. And because they would play someone that is not eligible, let's say it is 6 games that he played in the fall of the 2022-2023 season. Do those 6 games, do they end up getting vacated? And do they face additional sanctions? Now, it's one player. There's nothing to suggest that this is a widespread issue at LSU. And I don't want to say that it is a widespread issue at all at LSU until more information does end up coming out down the line. But if it is, do we see additional sanctions in regards to a postseason bans for LSU, scholarship reductions? Do we possibly see, a fine being placed? We saw Tennessee got fined in the fall for, NCAA violations. Does LSU get hit with a similar thing? The legal process will still need to play out. So who knows what's going to happen down the line? But I just found it's a very intriguing situation from the standpoint of college athletics, because not only could Butte, effectively see his NFL career come to an end. Your 6th-round draft pick, I would not be shocked if he ends up being released because of these allegations, but could it have long-lasting effects on LSU, and could it dial up the pressure on Brian Kelly to try to get more control under his program? Because Brian Kelly has not been there very long. He's only been there for a couple of years, and to already being investigated by the NCAA based on things that happened under his watch, it could be a little bit concerning. But if you are an LSU fan or an SEC fan, let me know down in the comments what you think of that as well. It's just a very intriguing situation that is going to continue to unfold as time progresses on. But not only could it have effects on Keyshawn Butte, could it have effects on LSU? I think it could. I think it absolutely could, and it certainly could be on the table. Again, it would take the NCAA to punish LSU if they went down this path. Probably looking at least 2 to 3 years based on how fast the NCAA moves on really anything. But it is a situation to monitor, especially if you're an LSU fan or simply a fan that pays closer attention to the SEC. But that is all that I had for tonight, though. Really enjoyed hopping on here on the Any Given Saturday, talking about some tea with the Jim Harbaugh situation, with the Keyshawn Butte situation, and the constant fire pit that is the transfer portal. I hope you guys enjoyed this as well. And I hope you continue to enjoy this as we progress through this longer period of time that we do not have college football games grace our screen that are actually live or not pre recorded. If you enjoyed this, make sure you go ahead and smack that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you're brand new. We're a small channel, so you do have a real opportunity to be an A1 since day one. And again, if you have a college football question that's burning and you are wondering what my opinion is on it, let me know that down in that comment section as well. And I will include it in a future podcast. We don't shy away from anything college football related over here. So, that being said, I'm going to sign off. You probably heard it a little bit in the background. My dogs are decided to get outside. Going to let them go ahead and do that. So we are signing off. I'm your host, Jake, and I hope you enjoyed this. And with that being said, this is the host of Any Given Saturday signing off and hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.